Hello everybody, this is Mahadeva the Thunder Wizard. I hope everybody is doing well in these strange and confusing times that we are living in. All right, so I thought I would, I don't know, it's a different subject. This channel's been around for a while, and so I do end up cycling back to things I've talked about before because a lot of people that come onto the channel are new and haven't watched all 1,500 or 2,000 videos or however many videos I have on my channel. And so today I'm going to be talking to you about the history of entheogens and psychedelics, both traditionally and modern. And I'm going to be explaining to you some of the differences, and I'm going to share with you what happened with the Vedic, the masters, the Vedic Hindu masters, and what happened with the Taoist masters, and why did they stop using psychedelics? I mean, other than the agoris who indulge in all kinds of chemicals, alcohol, THC, those kinds of things. But I'd put that in a different category. They're doing something else. We're just talking about why did human beings, at least in some cultures, why did human beings in some cultures stop using psychedelics? What was the reason for that? So let's talk about the history of psychedelics. There is no doubt whatsoever that you find in many cultures, somebody might even say most, or if not all cultures, when you go back far enough in time, you find that spiritual practitioners, shamans, wizards, whatever you have, they used hallucinogens of different kinds to achieve altered states of consciousness, in order to communicate with the gods, in order to travel, in order to, and of course, sometimes they do it just because it's fun. But it's pretty clear that pretty much everybody, at some point found some kind of psychedelic mushroom, whether it's peyote or whether it's just mushrooms lying around on the ground. I mean, human beings figured this out, and many of them had what they experienced as spiritual experiences. As you know, there is in the South American culture, there is the use of ayahuasca, which is still done today, and a lot of people who are not part of that culture, not born in that culture, will still go and do that. In fact, there are people that fly down to South America simply to be involved in ayahuasca rituals. In fact, a while ago, this was probably a couple of years ago, I was interested to know what was the modern mindset around it, and I was following somebody on YouTube who went to South America and stayed there for a long time, and had something like 32 ayahuasca trips. And she then came back to the States and decided to become a shaman. Well, I don't know what that means to her, but that's what she called herself. I'm not judging it, I just don't know. But I found out that the reason that she did that was she was trying to heal herself of Rocky Mountain spotted fever. And she was unsuccessful. So that had me thinking in a bunch of different ways. But so let me just acknowledge that this is a real thing. When I first started looking into shamanism, which was in the 80s, the 1980s, so we're talking 40 years ago. A lot of you weren't even alive that are watching me. You weren't even, nobody turned you, no, you weren't even a glint in somebody's eye. And the definition for shamanism back then was what we now call neo-shamanism, which was the Siberian use of drums. where you play a frame drum at a certain frequency to put yourself in an altered state of consciousness so that you can go to other realms, and you would travel to the upper realm, the lower realm, the middle realm, in order to get understanding, to have experiences, to heal, to soul retrieval, all that. That's what shamanism was in the 80s. And as you know, I identify as a shaman because the technical definition of a shaman has nothing to do with what somebody does. Has nothing to do with whether they play a drum or whether they use entheogens. It means nothing. Those are all different tools. A shaman is somebody who is a conduit between the spirit world and the human, somebody who seeks to create a dynamic balance between the human realm and the non-spiritual. That is the definition of a shaman. In fact, the truth is there's no such word as shamanism. Shaman is a word that has been hijacked from the Tengarist, and shaman in the Tengarist religion means priest or priestess. That's it. It doesn't mean somebody who goes into trance and talks to the spirits. It means priest or priestess. Their religion happens to be what we would consider to be a shamanic religion, where they believe in everything has a soul. Rocks, trees, sky, and we call that shamanism. But the only reason we call it shamanism is because our ancestors walked away from what's really would be called animism. Our ancestors walked away from it in 1,000 years ago. But our ancestors, whoever you are, our doesn't mean just mine, your, everybody's ancestors, everybody was animist. Everybody believed that everything had a soul and that you could communicate with everything. Rocks, trees, sky, water, ideas, the gods, the dead, the ancestors, this coffee cup, doesn't matter. And so when our ancestors, my ancestors specifically, they went to Siberia in the 1700s to spread the word of Jesus, and they saw these guys standing around banging on drums and going into trance, they used the word. Those priests were called shamans. So they started calling anybody who is an animist, who believes that everything has a spirit and you can go into a trance and talk to it. They started calling everybody who did that a shaman. And any religion that was animist in nature, they would call shamanism. So that's why you can say the word the African shamans. You can use the phrase Native American shamans. By the way, Native Americans hate that phrase. They hate it because they're not shamans. They don't practice Siberian Tengarism. That would be like walking up to a Catholic and calling him a Baptist minister. It's like, I'm not a Baptist. I'm a Catholic. It's like going up to a Buddhist and calling him a Hindu. I'm not a Hindu, I'm a Buddhist. So there's a lot of misunderstanding and a lot of, but the truth is that we change words all the time, and we change the meaning of words all the time. So there's no such, there's no wrong word of the use of the word shamanism. If you want to use the word, go right ahead. You're going to have your own definition. So that was my experience in the 80s, was that shamanism was you played a drum and you went into trance and you traveled to the three worlds. It had nothing to do with entheogens. Nothing. And not too long ago, again, probably 4 or 5 years ago, I ran into somebody and the topic came up and they said, "What do you do?" And I said, "I'm a shaman teacher." And he goes, "Oh yeah, so am I." And I went, "Oh cool. What school of shamanism? What sect of shamanism?" He looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" I said, who did you study under? Did you study under a master? Again, he looked at me really weird. He didn't know what I was talking about. I finally got him to tell me what he did, and what he said was that he took entheogens or he gave entheogens to people and guided them through their hallucinatory visions. I said, oh, that's shamanism. He says, yeah, I'm a shamanic counselor. And I went, oh, okay. And I didn't go any further than that. I ran into somebody else who talked, they wanted to know what I did, and I said, I'm a shamanic counselor, and they, oh, that's so great, and they wanted to talk about taking hallucinogens, and I said, I don't do that. I thought you said you were a shaman. So somewhere along the line, the idea of shamanism became equated with entheogens, with taking hallucinogens. So without making any judgment one way or another, I just want you to know that that is a modern interpretation. That's not the shaman, the people where the word shaman comes from, those people don't use entheogens. They don't use psychedelics. They use a drum. So that was something that was imposed, right or wrong, good or bad. All right, so let's now talk about the people, the two of the spiritual traditions that have some of the most respect in the world. And that would be the Taoists, the ancient indigenous shamanism of East Asia, China, and the Vedic, the Hindu Vedic masters, the rishis. So in both of those traditions, way, way, way back when, thousands of years ago, entheogens were used. The Vedas, the scriptures of the Vedic Hindus, the earliest ones, especially the earliest ones where you have the hymns. For instance, like the very famous, probably one of the most chanted mantras in history is the Triambakam mantra of Shiva. It has a specific meter to it. Triambakam yajammahe sugandhim pushtivartanam urvarukamiva bantanan mrityormukshiyam amritat. That's a mantra, but it's actually plucked out of the Vedas. So the Vedas are chanted like that for hours, pages and pages of them, chanting in a certain meter and rhythm and all of that. So this mantra was plucked out of that. Those Vedas, all of the Vedas, most of them are hymns to Indra. The Vedas were compiled when the Vedic masters were high on some very powerful hallucinogenic chemicals. They called it soma. Soma now means the moon because soma literally means the nectar of immortality. So these people would drink a concoction of different things that they called soma. And what they would do is they would channel Indra. And so we don't know what was in it, but ephedra, a strong stimulant, was in it. Most likely THC from cannabis was in it. Who knows what else was in there? And they would brew it at certain times under the moon and under mantras, and it was very precisely done. And then at the appointed time of the right moon or whatever, the priest, the Vedic priest, the Brahmin, would drink that and would go into trance and would begin to do these sing-songy things, and somebody would write them down or remember them or whatever. And that's how they came up with the Vedas. And the Taoists, there's some evidence that the early Taoists used, we don't know. But neither of these, the Taoists and the Vedic Hindus, neither of them use entheogens anymore. And so the question is why? Why did they stop doing that? Why is it still done in the Amazon, and why is it not done in India or China? Well, this has to do with, I think, evolution. So one of the most beautiful things about what we would call Native American, and there is no one Native American religion, it's just really, really frustrating that people do that. It so demeans, it demeans you, and it demeans whatever whatever culture you're hijacking. You know, when somebody appropriates some other scenario, there's so many people who practice Native American shamanism, and they're getting it out of books or getting it out of popular culture. They're not actually training with any Native American teachers, and it damages you when you do that. I understand why you do it. You do it because you don't want to be a Christian and you want to go to something original. You want to go back to something authentic. And your only option in your mind is Native American, because that's, real, and it's, I understand that. But why do the tribes in the Amazon, why do they do ayahuasca? Why didn't they stop? If the Vedics and the Hindu and the Taoists stopped, why didn't these guys stop? Well, the thing that's great about Native American, South American, I really don't care what word you use. The great thing about it is that it is an ancient tradition, and there is some depth and some wisdom and some authenticity that goes back all the way back to the original spiritual practices of everybody, which was, when you get to the root of it, which was deeply rooted animism, connection to nature, connection to the natural world around you, to the spirits around you, and creating a balance with that. And so all people, if you go back far enough, all people had found that they could use plant teachers to have that experience. And so, in the New World, when Europeans had showed up, what you really saw was, you saw a time capsule. You saw people that were still in Stone Age times. They were still operating, in the same way that our ancestors did during the Stone Age period. And there was no reason for them to do anything different than that. So it's a valid practice, and it's a real practice. But I guess what I'm laying for you is I want to introduce the idea that perhaps it's one that we can improve upon. We can go beyond that. We can go ahead and evolve. We can go ahead and use more sophisticated tools. Now, here's some other things that I have to say about this. I'm going to make a blanket statement that a lot of you may not like, so just be prepared for it. Be prepared that I am probably going to piss you off. And it's this. Westerners have no business playing around with entheogens. The people who live in those cultures, those native cultures where ayahuasca is used and peyote buttons and etc., those cultures have a completely different psychological programming. If they still live in their traditional culture, they are brought up from the moment that they are infants with the knowledge and the awareness that they are part of their environment, that there is no separation between them and the sky, the earth, the animals. They are living in a different world. For them to use entheogens in the proper tradition, because the other thing that's missing with the vast majority of neo-shamans who think that entheogen and hallucinogens is shamanism, is that there is a trained shaman master who knows how to protect you during your entheogen experience. And a real master in those traditions will say, because he'll see in your aura that you need it, he'll say, you're going to do a ritual. You're going to do a ritual. Somebody could come to them and say, I want to do a ritual. And they'll look at him and say, no, not for you. You're going to play drums with me and watch. And that means that there is something that needs to be protected while you are doing this. And what modern Westerners do, even with good intentions, number one, they hijack other people's very in-depth processes. We in the West, because we throw money at people, we have corrupted many shamans who will say, yes, come down to my country and pay me money and I will take you through a ritual. There's no shortage of people who aren't, no shortage of Westerners who are not initiated into anything who will say, yeah, I'll take you. Like the guy I met who said he was a shamanic counselor, which meant he gives people hallucinogens and then sits there and talks them through it. I can guarantee you that guy has not been trained, because I asked him, who trained you? He had no idea what I was talking about. So Westerners, you're not built for it. Westerners who go after entheogen experiences, the vast majority of them have psychological trauma. And you should never play around with entheogens if you have psychological trauma. And so just sit with that. You're not going to like that. I already know you're not going to like that. People who are really pro-entheogen, they have a strong attachment to it. They have a strong agenda. They have a strong need to want to defend their experience with it. And so I get that. So it's okay with me that you're going to want to argue with me and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, and have you ever done it? And the answer is yes, I have. So I have some understanding of it. But I also know why the Vedics and the Taoists stopped. They stopped doing those things. The Vedics, you cannot find a Vedic priest on the planet who can tell you what soma is made of. They'll guess, like I guess. Ephedra, maybe a little bit of cannabis, maybe a little bit of this. We don't know. And the reason we don't know is because they stopped doing it, and they stopped doing it because they found what they believe to be a more effective method. And this is where Kundalini Yoga came from. This is where learning how to get the Kundalini to rise up the spine and open up the chakras came from. They no longer needed the entheogen to crack their aura open so that they could channel Indra. Which, by the way, at that time, they would have been protected. The gods would have protected them. The priests would have known what mantras to chant to protect them. And it's important, I'm reiterating the word protection for a reason. When you do ayahuasca, when you do mushrooms, when you do any high, powerful entheogen, you need to be protected. And if you don't have that protection, and by the way, your good intentions are not protection enough. You need to have somebody who is not taking it, who can do whatever it is they do to watch your aura and protect you. If you don't do that, you are playing with matches and you're going to burn yourself. The other thing you need to know is that this, and I'm not judging it, this is just the reality of it. Whenever you ingest an entheogen of any kind, you are poisoning yourself. If it weren't poison, you wouldn't go into a trance. The trance is a near-death experience. How many people who have done entheogens can talk about a near-death experience? In fact, I just had a friend over here yesterday who was telling me about his son, and he was telling me what his son was telling him, and that he had taken some mushrooms and he closed his eyes and he lifted up out of his body and he looked and he could see his body down below him and his friends. And that's a near-death experience. It means your soul has come out of your body. Near-death experiences happen when you poison yourself. When you take many entheogens, you have to puke. You get diarrhea. That's what the body does when it's trying to expel a poison. So don't lie to yourself here. This is a near-death experience. You are forcibly putting your body into a near-death experience. You're cracking your aura open so that you can have an experience. And as long as you understand that, as long as you own that, good on you. But if you want to compare ingesting a substance into your body to artificially create a near-death experience, if you want to equate that with other types of shamanic practices, I think we could have a long discussion about why that might not be in the same category. So the Taoists did the same thing. The Taoists stopped using entheogens. And as you know, if you haven't experienced it, the Taoists, the indigenous Chinese practice in China, these people have probably the most respect in the world. Anybody who knows anything about deep Taoist practices, you cannot have anything other than complete respect for them. These are the masters. These are the masters of energetics. These are the masters of, without any external influence, being able to leave their body, being able to change their body from the inside out. There is nobody that can come close, not even the Vedics. The Vedics have a different, they're focusing on Kundalini, which is a totally different experience than Chi or Prana. Totally different energy. You can sometimes work together and do them, but they're totally different. And so some of you have heard me say this over and over and over again. You've been following me for a while, and some of you are new. And somebody asked me in the last live stream, what do I think about using ayahuasca to raise Kundalini? And I was as respectful as I could be, but looking back on it, that's somebody that, forgive me for saying so, is completely uneducated in what Kundalini is and what ayahuasca does to the body. Ayahuasca does not raise Kundalini. And so, when people throw around these words like Kundalini, as though Kundalini experience is a general experience for all spiritual experiences, it's not. It's a very specific energy for a very specific purpose and experience. And Chi, life force energy. Life force energy is very, very, very stony stuff. And when you know how to change it from Jing, which is the most physical of the Chi energy, to Qi, which is life force energy, to Shen, which is pure spirit energy. These are all completely different sciences. So, obviously you can tell from the way that I talk that I prefer doing non-plant sources. Number one, because it's an artificial experience. It's a passive experience, and I personally don't believe in doing anything passively. I believe in doing things actively. It's a passive experience because if you're not able to bring yourself to that state of consciousness by yourself, then you have to take something. You have to take something which will force an experience on you. That's artificial. I'm just using the word correctly. It's not a judgment. The ancient masters did that. And then they found a way that they felt was superior to that. The other thing that you need to know when you take anything in your body, any chemical, because that's what it is. You can say it's a plant teacher and all those things might be true, but you are ingesting a chemical. Anytime that you ingest a chemical in your body that gives you a spiritual experience, you are forcibly tearing your aura open. This is why in the original state, you had to have a master shaman protect you. He had to know the songs. He had to know the drum rhythms. He had to know the mantra in the case of the Vedics. They have techniques to protect you because they know that what you're doing is you're forcibly tearing your aura wide open. On a physical level, the pineal and the pituitary are the glands that secrete DMT and other things, the God chemical. These things are released naturally, as well as a bunch of other chemicals that we need to survive. And as I said in a response to somebody, for example, when you drink coffee, you are taking a chemical which stimulates your adrenal glands. That's why you feel hyped up. But what ends up happening is that your body says, whoa, 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 man, there's way too much adrenaline. Let us stop adrenaline production. Let's just stop it. So what happens after you're high off the coffee? You crash. Because now your body has completely shut off all of the adrenaline. And the same thing is true like when you do, this is why, cocaine, same thing, it releases all kinds of feel-good chemicals in the glands of the brain. But this is what happens with ayahuasca. What ayahuasca does is it force feeds you DMT, which your body naturally produces. But when you force feed it into the body says, wow. The pineal says, hang on, whoa. Stop all production of DMT. We have far too much in the body. And it shuts down. And so then it has to start back up again. If you keep doing this on a regular basis, you can guess what happens. The pineal starts losing its ability to produce DMT, and then you become completely dependent on some outside chemical to give you that DMT experience. So this is, without them realizing it, this is why the Vedics said, hey, we don't need to do that. We don't need to drink the soma anymore. We've got this kundalini, we can do kachari mudra, we can breathe a certain way, and that'll release everything. And it's done naturally within the body. There's no side effects. And let's not kid ourselves. When there are people alive today who are permanently damaged, their nervous system has been permanently damaged by ayahuasca. So let's not kid ourselves about that. This is powerful stuff you're playing around with. And the other thing to be aware of is that shamanism, the ability to go into an altered state and go off into the other regions, that is done, that practice was discovered or invented, if you will, as a need for survival. The very first shamans were not seeking to be enlightened with the universe. The very first shamans were hunter-gatherers who were walking around and they didn't have any food. And if they didn't find meat, they were going to starve. Or if they didn't find shelter, or if they didn't find water, they were going to die. So somebody had to create within themselves the ability to go outside of their body and travel around and look for the herds of animals or communicate with the spirit of whatever it is, the musk ox or the deer or whatever they were hunting. So to go into shamanism and shamanic journeying with a desire for entertainment, you're asking for trouble. When you don't respect these powers, you're asking for trouble. And this is why a lot of people can have negative experiences. They can have bad trips. They can meet demons. They can, it's because you're doing it for, I'm not going to say the wrong reasons, but you're doing it with a lack of respect. If you do anything out of desperation, like because you need to find meaning in your life, and you do some really extreme thing, this is why I say Westerners shouldn't do this. They shouldn't play around with entheogens, because most of the Westerners and those of you talking to me, let's be honest, you do it because you are in pain. You don't like this world, and you want to find something that will give you meaning. You want to have an experience so that you can have experienced your life and God and whatever else. And those usually, I'm not going to say every time, because there's no such thing. There's no blanket statement that covers everything. For some people, this is a way that they have to go. This is something that they need to do. The other thing that's important to know is that in those cultures, many times, you would only do this once or twice in a lifetime. When you are coming of age and you need to find out your true purpose, the shaman would sing the songs and drum the drums and give you whatever entheogen that they used. And because your intention was to find your true nature, you would have an experience. And that would be it for the rest of your life. You wouldn't need to do it ever again. Again, you would respect the process. Doing it over and over and over again shows a lack of respect. You don't appreciate it. Whenever you don't appreciate powerful things, you will suffer. You will suffer from not respecting them. Anyway, have I gone through all of the old thing? Do I sound like the anal retentive old man telling you can't have fun? The good news is that there are natural methods that are far more powerful than anything. In fact, I'm sitting here right now. I didn't even do any practices last night. The night before last, I did my practices for a fairly decent amount of time. It knocked me out. After experiencing it, I slept for 8 or 9 hours. And the whole next day I was, I felt good, but I really, I couldn't really do a lot physically because I was so not connected to my body. And so here I am 2 days later, and my hands are buzzing with energy. If you could feel, if I were to put the palm of my hand on, you would feel the heat and the power that came from that. And every time I do that, it releases DMT. It releases energy in the body that actually bathes the cells in life force energy and releases all kinds of things which help to keep me young and healthy. This is the benefit of doing the natural way. This is why yogis, who are committed to doing Kundalini yoga, why they live so long, why they're so healthy, why many of them look so young. This is why Taoist masters, again, real Taoist masters, I'm not saying I'm one, but real Taoist masters, you can't tell how old they are. They're very young, they're very energetic. They are having experiences as deep, if not deeper, than any external chemical can give you without any of the negative side effects. And so the good news is that if you want to have that power, you want to have that experience, there are ways to do it without having to force your body to go through a near-death experience. And that's what all this stuff here is. I'm not the only game in town by any stretch of the imagination. I've trained with masters from different traditions around the world. This is the most powerful one I've found. I've talked about it over and over again. But I'm happy to take any questions. I'm even happy to, if somebody doesn't like what I'm saying and they want to debate, as long as you're respectful, I'm happy to listen to what you have to say. But I'm also open to answering any questions. I haven't looked at the chat yet, but this is a question and answer, which means that if you have a question, you write the word question in all caps, and then just write the question in normal. If you have an honest feeling, you can write the word honest feeling, and I will take a look at that. All right, let's see what we got here. All right, so as I suspected, I was going to piss people off. Because, listen, there are some people that do entheogens for the right reasons, and there are some people that do entheogens because, let's face it, they like to also smoke weed and drink, and they want to escape. And those people tend to be very attached to their, whatever their chemical use is. So, I'm already seeing that there are people pissed off at me. Shamanism has always been associated with entheogens. Where do you get that information? Where's your scholarly information? And so what? Even if that were true, so what? But I'm here to tell you, just objectively speaking, you're wrong. I don't have an agenda one way or another. Even if it were, I would still say that the ways that have evolved beyond that, in my opinion, are more effective. So even if what you say is true, but it's not true. Shamanism has not always been associated. Shamanism is, again, the definition of shamanism is there is no such word. Shamanism. When you translate that word, that's translated as priestism. The word shaman means priest in the Siberian tradition, and those priests don't use entheogens. So technically speaking, everything about that statement is 100% inaccurate. What else? Vincent.thunderwizard.com. He is my certified astrologer. You can go to his website, vincent.thunderwizard.com, and get a reading from him. You can also just go to astrology.thunderwizard.com and get a reading from me or from any of my certified astrologers. Zarelath, question. Is the mantra you did from the Vedas? Yes. It's from one of the oldest Vedas, I believe. The same as the one you did in your first COVID healing meditation audio? Yes. It was sometime in early spring. Yes, that is the same mantra. It's called the Triambakam mantra, the I forget, there's other words for it, but there are the two most chanted mantras in the world. One of them is the Triambakam mantra, which is a mantra to Rudra, which was an early form of Shiva. And the other one is the, what is that one? I forget the name of it. Ong Bur, Ong Buvaha, Ong Swaha, Ong Maha, Ong Janaha, Ong Tapaha, Ong Satyam, Ong Tat Savitur Varenyam, Bhargo Devasya Dimahi, Dhiyo Yonah Prachodayat. That's the most chanted mantra in the world. It's one of the oldest. I forget what it's called. Zarelath, question. Could raising awareness of the Dantian and three selves be the best thing to teach those making false assumptions about Kundalini? How do you raise awareness of the Dantian? You mean by educating people? Well, first off, if somebody comes to you and wants to learn, that's one thing. I don't need to raise awareness. I really don't have an issue. I don't have an attachment. If people want to do entheogens, go ahead. Many people do entheogens, and it's a breakthrough experience for them that changes their life, and they can trace back their awareness and their awakening to that experience. So I'm not saying entheogens are wrong. They obviously have done tremendous things for people throughout history. Because my friend Western Gnosis, even though he's got his history wrong, most, if not all, most ancient spirituality has some association with some kind of entheogen. And that's just, what was part of our evolution. I think that we've, it's like, why would you drive an 18-wheeler truck through a slalom course? It'll get you through there, but it's going to be clunky. Or you can ride an electric motorcycle. Which one is going to do better for you? We have far more refined, advanced tools that do not have any negative side effects. And the other thing about entheogens is this. And this is why people who do entheogens get so bent out of shape when somebody like me comes along and says, listen, this isn't the best way to do it. There's better ways to do it. Is because, again, many people who do entheogens are already doing drugs. They smoke weed on a daily basis, they drink, and they don't make a difference. For them, they're spiritualizing a need to get high. And this is why, anyway, this is why Westerners, for instance, will do ayahuasca a bunch of times, all the time. And in fact, they make it part of their religion. They don't understand that that's not how it was originally done in many cultures. You do it once or twice. You do it very special occasions. You don't do it on a regular basis. So I don't need to raise awareness. I really just was sitting around thinking, what should I talk about? Well, somebody asked me about this. This is somebody I could talk about. If you guys want to know my take on it, I'm happy to tell you. The reason why it's an interesting subject for me is because having done both, and having practiced what I believe to be the most powerful energy practice on the planet, in my experience at the very least, is that the advanced natural techniques are so powerful and so superior to any artificial chemical you could ingest. And the clarity that brings you. When people use entheogens, again, you are forcing your body to have an experience. That's just the fact of the matter. You are ingesting a chemical that is going to make the glands of the brain and the nervous system, it's going to force your body and your mind to have an experience. There's nothing subtle about it. And the danger is that entheogens, because it is a forced experience, it's not something that comes out naturally as a result of it's like taking steroids. That's a good example. If you want to become Mr. Olympia now, you got to take steroids. Steroids is an artificial way of enhancing what your body does naturally. You're putting a larger amount of testosterone and whatever else they use nowadays into the body, and the body responds with much larger than normal muscles. But many of those guys end up having kidney problems, liver problems. Many of them die of heart attacks, brain aneurysms, all kinds of other things happen to them. When you abuse that process, which those guys have to in order to, Arnold Schwarzenegger, even, way back then, they only took testosterone, but he's had 2, 3 heart operations. It's because testosterone enlarges the heart. So many bodybuilders, even from the 70s, die of heart attacks, they die of liver failure, because those organs expand beyond, they get enlarged, which is not a good thing. So when you do entheogens, you're doing that. You are exploding your aura out. You're oftentimes tearing holes in it. And it gets expanded so fast, like just hyperinflating a balloon. For instance, I've done a video on THC, on marijuana. So anybody who hasn't watched it, you can go search my channel for marijuana, cannabis, and I've done a couple of videos on it. And 1,000, 2,000 years ago, the Chinese used to use cannabis as an herb, as a healing herb for different things, to open up the qi and move it through the body. But bear in mind, the cannabis that people take now, 25% THC? Bear in mind that weed, we call it weed because it's a weed, and it grows, in places just like a weed does. And so you would go out and you would harvest these weeds, and these weeds had maybe 3% THC in them. So when you read 2,000 years ago of Chinese herbalists who are making teas with cannabis, the cannabis had 3% THC. It's a stimulant. It opens up the meridians. 25% THC is so totally over the top. And when people do it now, they have to, if there are people out there who are taking like bong hits of 2 and 3 hits of 25% THC, you have to get yourself there. You have to take months to get yourself acclimated to that amount of THC, which in essence means that you've forced your body to turn off all kinds of stuff, and you call it being acclimated, but really you've just shut down so many systems in your body to be able to handle that much THC. It's just crazy. Really nuts. So what THC does, the reason why when you smoke weed or ingest it or however you get it in there, the reason why you go, wow, man, and you have these really intense thoughts, man. I was thinking like the other day, and I was looking at my thumbnail, man, and I'm like, wow, I wonder if like there's a universe in my thumbnail, and maybe there's some dude on a planet in the universe in my thumbnail, and he's smoking weed too, man. Looking at his I'm not making fun of that. That was me. Back when I was in high school, that was me smoking weed. The reason why you have that experience and you feel like you have this huge awakening of awareness, it's an energy thing. So at the base of your spine, there's an aperture. Aperture opens and closes. There's an aperture at the base of your spine called the Ming Men. And the Ming Men regulates how much of the chi in your aura goes up into your brain and into your body. It's a very sensitive little thing. It opens and closes like an aperture. And when you smoke weed or ingest THC, that aperture opens up 100%. It goes like that. That's why if you get high, all of a sudden you get a head rush. Whoa, head rush, man. It's because that aperture has opened up to 100% and it has sucked in all of the chi in your aura up into your head. And so your head now has ballooned out. That's why you feel like your head is floating, right? You feel like you're this headless and you're floating around and you have all these intense thoughts, man. That's why. But the problem is that when it opens up like that so fast and it sucks up all of your external energy in your aura up into your head, the other thing that happens is it brings everything else with it. So imagine like, you were to, it's the pressure outside of your house is greater than inside, and you were to open up a window really big. All of the air would rush in, but so would all of the dust and the leaves and the bugs and whatever else is out there is going to get sucked into your house. Even if you close the window, now you're going to have all this stuff, flying around. This is exactly what happens. Your aura, which is there to protect you, it protects you from negative influences, from negative energies. It's there to protect you. It's your first and last defense for your physical and psychological and spiritual health. And when you ingest THC, that Ming Men opens to 100%. All of your energy comes flooding into your head, but so does all of any gunk, any spirits. Spirits love climbing inside people's aura who do drugs. They love it. Alcohol especially. And there are people who have died, and they're ghosts. They die of alcoholism. Their lower self will walk around, hang around in bars and wait for people to get high. And guess what? As soon as they see somebody that's drunk, they'll climb inside that person's aura because they can't drink, but they want to get drunk. So they'll climb inside your aura and then they'll tell you, you need to go drink. If they're a drug addict, they OD'd on heroin. They're going to look for heroin addicts. They're going to look for any addict and start saying, hey, you need to start taking some heroin. So that when you take heroin, they can climb inside your aura. This is the kind of shit that happens when you don't know what you're doing. 1,000 years ago, you're a Chinese guy and you see that some guy has a problem with energy flow in his body. So you give him a concoction of tea that has 3% THC in it. It's going to just very mellowly open up, it's going to stimulate the fire in the body, and it's going to help him out. People out there, doing 25% THC, they're blowing their head open like a balloon. I'm just telling you the energetic facts. You don't have to like it. It's just the way it is. But I'll tell you, I do this stuff. I'll tell you the main reason I started doing it, because it gets me so high. It gets me higher and more, it's a better buzz than anything, any chemical out there. So, if you're a person who likes to take entheogens for the effect, I've got a better one for you. This works much better. Here's the difference. When you do an external entheogen, again, unless you're doing it the proper way, in the tradition, you've grown up in that society, there is an actual master who can protect your aura and knows how to be there and do all the right songs and the chants and everything to protect you while you do it. Unless you're doing something like that, what was I going to say? I forgot what I was going to say. Anyways, you get my point. I mean, you can... Oh, the difference is that when you do it artificially, you open up your lower self without any protection. And so you're just as likely to get lost. You may have a vision that you talk to a god or something like that. But you could be just as likely to have a vision of your own lower self, your own narcissistic fears or fantasies, and it could just be as much nonsense as anything else. I mean, people hallucinate, alcoholics hallucinate, people on drugs hallucinate. They're taking a trip into their lower self. So that's the thing. When you don't do it accurately with the right protection, you don't know whether or not you're just having an experience of your narcissism, or if you're actually talking to a higher being. You don't know. When you do this stuff, you do it naturally, you are going to, the negative part of that is that you're going to face all of your negative feelings. So it could be challenging. You might have some challenging feelings that will come up. But it's actually healthy because you're releasing them. And you're making more room in your spirit for more energy, which gives you a higher vibration, which gives you greater clarity. And the downside is that you have to actually do the work. You have to do the practice. You have to do the discipline. And then you have to live with the painful emotional outcome of that. And the downside of taking the external chemical is that you're going to have to deal with the toxins that you've put into your system. You're going to have to deal with your pineal and your pituitary having shut down and have to start back up again. And so the benefit is you get an experience immediately without having to earn it. Because taking a chemical is you're getting the experience without earning it. It's like going to the bank and getting a loan. They're going to give you a lot of money, but you're going to be charged interest. Sometimes a lot of interest. You might never get out from underneath it. So that's what's happening when you're force feeding these entheogens into your body to have an experience. You're going to pay a price for that. And that's what the master is there to do. The master is there to look at you and to see, no, not for you, or okay, for you, and then they protect you. When you just decide, I'm going to be spiritual, man, and I'm going to go find some mushrooms, and that's going to the bank and getting, it's not going to the bank, it's going to the mafioso and getting a loan from him. He'll give you the money, but if you don't pay him quadruple what he gave you within a week, guess what? He now owns your business. He's married to your wife. You've given him your car. He's busted your kneecaps. When you do it naturally, you will earn it for two reasons. Number one, you'll do the work. You'll actually have to discipline yourself to do the practice on a daily basis. So instead of having a flood of DMT in one experience because you drank some ayahuasca, you're going to have to practice every day for who knows how long, and then the body, you'll like earn the ability for the DMT to naturally be released into your body. The downside is you'll have to face all of your attachments and your negativity, which can be challenging. The other side is you force it, you immediately get the experience, but the downside is that you don't know whether or not your experience was actual or if it was your unconscious fantasies, and you're going to have to pay a price physically. You're going to have to wait and heal yourself so that your pineal can get back up to speed again. And if you do it too much too often, the pineal will never recover. If you blast your aura open, forever and ever, the aura is going to be like a limp, it's going to be like a limp, really oversized cloak. It's just going to drag around on the ground. It's not going to serve you. All right, so the good news is that you can get it, but you're going to have to pay the price through discipline and actually facing your uncomfortable feelings. And the other one is you're going to have to pay the price with your health and with perhaps your sanity. What else? So to answer your question, I don't know that I need to raise anybody's awareness. I'm doing it now. The best way to raise people's awareness about anything is to work on yourself. And then when you do that, people will come to you. I'm doing this video because, once again, somebody who's new to the channel is asking me about entheogens. So even though I've made numerous videos about it, they don't know that. I'm happy to do that, but I'm doing it in response to people asking me. I don't go knocking on people's doors. I don't walk into, the ayahuasca ceremonies and stand up and tell them why they shouldn't do it. It's none of my business. Do whatever the hell they want. What else? Impetus correspondent question. Do you know the reason a lot of sadhus and agoris are seen smoking chillums? What the reason is? Well, as I said, that they still do that, and it's not the same. They're not doing it for the same reasons that the original Vedics did to channel the Vedas. They're doing something altogether different. So the agoris that do it, bear in mind, agora is a very specific thing. And not everybody should be an agori. There's a lot of agoris that are just alcoholics and drug addicts, and they want to spiritualize their drug and alcohol addiction. Let's not bullshit each other. But an agori knows that he is going into that danger. So an agori is somebody who is seeking to actually stimulate his unconscious attachments. He's actually trying to get himself to where he could potentially become addicted. And then he is seeking to transcend beyond that. So ideally with agoris, after they've gone through their period of drinking alcohol in the graveyard or smoking whatever they smoke, they're actually trying to get to a place where they've moved beyond that, and then they don't do that. So a true agori in the latter part of their life is actually very clean, very healthy, and doesn't put chemicals into their body. And that's one of the ways that they've overcome it. So Tantra, it's an extreme form of Tantra. So Tantra is when you achieve enlightenment by overcoming your desires. So there's two ways to overcome your desires, extreme. One is to deny them. And the danger of that is that they will overcome you. And then you'll end up, worse off than you were before. And the tantrics say no, completely satisfy every single desire you have, and then it won't mean anything to you. But then again, you run into the same problem. So agoris are really playing with, they're really playing with danger. And if they're a true agori, they're doing it consciously. They know that smoking weed is actually damaging to them and could potentially trap them in their own addictions. They know that, and they're wanting to face that head on. But if you look at agoris, like real agoris, and you look at when they're old, they look like shit. A lot of them. A lot of them are just, they have no, muscle tone on their body. They have no teeth. They look really, but their mindset is they don't like the physical body anyway. This body, I'm not this body. So for me, I look at it, I have the opposite. I love my body, and my body is the vehicle through which I can experience this physical world. So the last thing I want to do is damage it in any way. So I can't judge them for that, but for me, that would just be so disrespectful to the universe to damage and disrespect my body like that. So to answer your question, there's like that. My experience with, those guys is that a lot of them are just alcoholics and drug addicts that are spiritualizing it. And the true ones eventually get to the point where they move beyond it and they let it go. Vincent.thunderwizard.com question. I have hypopituitarism. I'd like to know how that may affect the production of spiritual chemicals and hormones in the brain when doing it. Okay. So I can't tell you exactly what happens other than the lightning qigong will help balance that. So whether it's hupo or hypo, too little or too much, the lightning qigong is going to help the body balance itself. Because it's a Taoist practice. So Taoism is about balance. So whenever you do any kind of Taoist practice, qigong, tai chi, meditation, emptiness meditation, or the lightning qigong, that practice is going to create a balance. So the only thing that you need to know when you do this stuff is if you do it, does it feel good? Now I know that emotionally some things come up which are challenging, but as you know, they come and they go. They're released. But what stays for me is the absolute feeling of physical bliss. It's just, it's undeniable. And it's amazing and wonderful, and it's the best high I've ever had, and it only helps me. If I want to get really super high, I'll practice for 2 hours straight, and then I'll wake up the next day and my body will be more vibrant, the blood will be flowing through I'll feel better and healthier. So that's my experience of it anyway. What else? Fierg question. What is exactly happening when someone achieves an out-of-body experience during meditation? I'm not sure there is one experience. I don't know. We have three selves. We have a lower self, a middle self, and an upper self. In the lower self, the vast majority of dreams, the vast majority of psychic visions, the vast majority of psychic predictions are all coming from the lower self. So the lower self, when it's clean, this is what meditation is. So when people meditate, like the Buddhists are trying to, meditate and create they're trying to dust off the mirror. What they're doing is they're cleaning out the unconscious programming in the lower self. And so that's why, a lot of meditation is watching the thoughts. When you watch the thought and you don't react to it, you don't attach to it, you're actually cleaning off your lower self. When your lower self is clean, then the lower self has the ability to travel to other realms, has the ability to channel beings and entities and all of that. But that's because the person has completely worked through all of their psychological issues. Again, you do things like weed and you do other stuff, you're piling on, you're indulging in your psychological garbage, which makes it worse. So how long? Let's see. So what's exactly happening? I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of experiences, and I use all kinds of, tools to get information, but I never take any of it seriously. So for instance, the Hool breath, you can just go onto YouTube and type in Hool breath and do that. And I recommend that everybody do that. Go and do the Hool breath. That Hool breath was a result of me having, during my training, and I was no longer in the sect that I was in, and I was trying to finalize my training, so I had to try other different traditions, and I started mixing different energy traditions, which is not always advisable. And I ended up having an energy conflict, which was creating a lot of heat. And it was very uncomfortable. So I just briefly went into meditation, and I asked the Ascended Masters, if there's anybody out there, please give me a one sound breath meditation to balance this. And immediately, very subtly, the Hool breath came to me. It was very, very subtle. If I wasn't paying attention, I could have just completely not even heard it or talked myself out of it. But because I don't take anything seriously, something comes to me, I'll go, oh, that's interesting, and I acknowledge it. And then I try it out. If nothing happens, I go, oh, that was just my head talking to me. But I did exactly what was described to me in that instant to do, and I did it, and boom, I felt more energy and more balance than I ever had. And I went, this is something real. But I still didn't take it seriously. I still researched it, and I did a ton of research, and as a result of that came to the realization that this wasn't a Taoist or a Vedic practice, that this was a chant to the Earth Mother Goddess of Northwestern Europe. So I was like, whoa, where did that come from? So to answer your question, what exactly happens? It all depends on the person. It depends on their level of awareness. It depends on the technique. But anybody who does any kind of shamanism or any kind of trance-inducing stuff, don't take anything seriously that happens. Acknowledge it, listen to it. When you wake up after a dream, write down the dream word for word, and then just put it aside and don't mess with it. And then sit with it for a while, research it. But if you're attached to all of your visions, you're going to create nonsense. So for instance, like when I do rune readings for myself, there's a 50% chance that the rune reading is going to be my unconscious, desire. So I can't trust it. When I do readings for myself, I can't trust it because I have an attachment. If you have an attachment, your unconscious mind will try and lie to you that your attachment is real. This is why there's so many, for instance, David Icke, right? David Icke, we all know him. A lot of people don't know that when he first came out to the world as this spiritual whatever, he claimed that he was the second coming of Jesus. And he made a bunch of predictions, that New Zealand was going to fall off, sink into the, and he had all these dates for it. And every one of his predictions never happened. And then he went and reinvented himself and turned himself into what he is now. But the point is that he was obviously having an experience from his lower self. And your lower self, your ego is involved. You don't know. You can't trust it. So just because somebody meditates and has an out-of-body experience doesn't in and of itself mean anything. And then, where did you go? You had an out-of-body experience. Does that mean you went to the highest place of awareness, or did you go to some lower place where you don't know? So don't take yourself too seriously about it. Whatever experiences you have, great. Exactly what's happening, that depends on a bunch of other things, to be honest. I don't know that I have an answer to your question. What else? How long does it usually take for the aura to repair itself after an ayahuasca ceremony? I have no idea. It depends on the person. It depends on the person. It depends on the, your state of energy before you did it. It depends on the master you were doing it under. I mean, I don't know why it matters. I mean, that's like anything. You know, how long does it take to have your body repair from anything? It takes however long it takes. So the thing to do is, the best thing to do to repair the aura is, in my experience, is Qigong. First off, you got to stop doing all chemicals. So I'd stop smoking, I'd stop drinking, I'd stop doing any kind of recreational chemicals, weed, whatever else, coffee. I would get rid of all of it. And then I would do some Qigong. So you can go onto this channel and look into the playlists and look for the Qigong. Just start doing, you can do the awakening. In fact, let me just go ahead and give you a link. This is something I did recently, and I give you multiple practices to do, and I give it to you for free. But if you do any of this, this will repair your aura. How long? I don't know. That all depends on you. So let me take a look and see here. So just give me a second. I got to find it. It's fairly new. There it is. Okay, here's the link. Go do this. Watch this video and do these things. Get rid of all the chemicals, and you can heal your aura. All right, what else? Donnie Darko, Honest Feeling. Again, it was really great if you put it in all caps so I don't miss it. This is why people can do inhuman amounts of substances. The spirit is siphoning the excess off to get high. Okay, yeah. Cornelia, it is now on a screen just, okay, I don't know what that means. Daniel Cardenas, okay, that's not a question. Daniel Cardenas, how long have you been watching my channel? How many times have you heard me say, please put the word question in all caps? Why do I do that? Because I don't want to miss your question. Why is that a challenge for you? What is the best thing to do if you get a panic attack while high? Well, that assumes that I'm saying you should go get high. So maybe you should just stop getting high, and then you don't have to worry about it. I mean, if I tell you, first off, I have no idea, but even if I did, that would be me telling you, you know, co-signing your need to go get high. I don't, I mean, why would you do something that gives you a panic attack to begin with? Why would you want to do that? So I don't have an answer for you. My answer for you is just stop getting high, and then you never have to ask that question again. Okay, nothing else? All right, I think I need to go surfing. I think I need to stop obsessing over what Airbnb in Costa Rica I'm going to move to, which is really driving me crazy. I mean, it's really stressing me out. I think I need to just go surfing and try and figure it out later. So I don't see any more questions. So you guys know the drill. If you're new to the channel, go check out the links. And I recommend everybody do the Warrior 90-Day Lightning Qigong. Subscribe to that. I've just uploaded some very new, powerful stuff. And of course, you'll get access to all of my shamanism and all of the, you know, just the whole thing. You'll get access to all of the levels of teaching that are on the Patreon channel. And if you don't like it, you can unsubscribe. What have you got to lose? All right, that's it for me. Take care of yourselves. I will see you guys next time.